Hey, welcome back to my car shop. Today I want to share a little bit of my background in the automotive industry and in my career that helps fund what we do here in the shop, as well as sharing some of my experiences and how I developed the skills that I have to be able to do the work that you see here on the channel. So let's watch the show intro and I'll see you in 30 seconds on the other side. I'll be back. It'll almost be a snap.
Working out of a 100-year-old refurbished barn, bringing 35 years of experience to projects considered beyond repair. Vision, creativity, and problem solving are essential tools in this place. Watch as we transform junk into polished metal miracles. This is My Cars Shop.
It's hard to believe that my experience with cars goes back 40 years. I got my first car when I was 14, 15 years old. Was a 1970 Dodge truck, big block 4-speed. Very quickly after that got a 68 Roadrunner clone car. And just seems like I've had cars always, more than one. I can't think of a time ever that I've only had one. But it does bear the question people ask, and my friend John over on the channel Life at Speed, which you can find up here, there's a link to his channel. He just recently did an episode on how he affords to be able to do these cars, and it kind of spurred me to want to share a little of my background as well, because we actually have a similar background. So I started out working on stuff from the time I was little. Probably 8 years old. I was working on bicycles and go-karts and lawnmowers and always had something going with my hands. Was always interested in cars, working on cars. My dad did a lot of his own work. I had my uncle did his own work. So I was always around that kind of thing. And so I naturally had an interest in all things automotive. When I was in high school, my friend Ron bought me a subscription to CarCraft magazine, which really gave me an enthusiasm for sexy cars and, quite frankly, if you remember the 80s, sexy girls. So I've always been around this stuff, and I wasn't always a Mopar guy, but being as the first couple of cars that I personally owned were Mopars, I kind of ended up going down that path. But I did start out being very interested in Mustangs and Fords early on because my dad tended to be more of a Ford guy. So I took classes in high school. I took an agriculture mechanics class, which is actually where I learned how to weld. And then the next year in high school, I took an automotive tech class, which is ironic because for many years as an adult, I was on the advisory committee for that program as well. But so I took an automotive class, competed in some mechanics competitions. That led me to going to tech school for mechanics. So I attended Lincoln Tech in Indianapolis for a year in their auto diesel program. For various reasons, I ended up switching and going to a regular college in our local area here. So I moved back home again. Took general studies there because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But it was a junior college. So I went to university. After that, I went to Northern Michigan University, my alma mater, where I received a bachelor's degree in history. I wasn't interested in teaching, but I was very interested in historical research, which comes into play in my career a bit later. But I didn't know what to do for a minor. I was close to the point of graduating and didn't have enough credits in anything in the liberal studies field to be able to get a degree. But lo and behold, I was carrying around all these tech credits. So I started working with my advisor and the university and ended up pioneering a program. I was the first student to ever graduate from Northern Michigan University, maybe the only one, to graduate with a liberal studies major and a tech minor in power and transportation technologies, which is a glorified auto mechanics. Basically, there was a little more involved in that. But also during college, I was very interested in cars as always. We used to go junkyarding with my roommates. I bought my first Hemis when I was in college, transported them to my parents' house in the back of my buddy Vince's truck. One of them, I actually took the back seat out of my 68 Dart and hauled it home and disassembled it, put it in the back seat and in the trunk. But I was always looking for cars and looking for deals and looking for stuff. And happened to see a 63.5 Ford Galaxy 394 speed car driving through town in Marquette, Michigan, followed it to its point of origin, and lo and behold, there was a speed shop in an industrial park that I had no idea was there. So it became a hangout for me while I was in college, and it wasn't long before the owner of the shop asked if I was interested in cleaning up the body shop because it was a mess. So I did. I took that on, decided to go ahead and clean up the body shop, worked for a few days, got that done, made the place sparkle, washed the place from top to bottom, and they were so impressed with what I did, he ended up offering me a job, pushing the broom, just kind of keeping the shop tidy, and eventually turned into doing some hands-on stuff. I ended up becoming kind of one of the key mechanical guys there. There was 2 employees, myself and a fellow named Jack. He was the body guy. And the owner. The longer I was there, the more responsibilities I got. Pretty soon I was doing the engine building and a lot of the mechanical work on customer cars, on classic cars. I ended up doing parts, ended up becoming a co-manager of the place, and the owner didn't have to do a whole lot because Jack and I were pretty much running the thing. But I became restless. I felt like I'd gone as far as I could go there. The money was not the best, and I was married at that time, a full-time student. I was also working in university as a custodian, trying to make ends meet. And an opportunity came up to go ahead and be a mechanic in a dealership, local Dodge dealership. So I took that job, wrenched there for a while, and ended up moving over into the cleanup department, managing that department. Started doing some paint and body work because back at the hot rod shop I had been taught by Jack how to do paint and body work. So I kind of developed into what they called their cleanup shop department manager, which was basically me and a couple of part-time people. But we did a lot of car reconditioning, buffing paint, taking sow's ears and turning them into silk purses. Some around in that time were not sure how it happened, but my wife ended up falling pregnant. It's a great mystery. We're not sure what happened, but as our son Joe was approaching, we decided we wanted to be closer to family. So at that time we were 400 miles away from her family, and wanted to be closer to her family and the farm and her siblings and so forth. So we decided to go ahead and move back to the local area here where we are now. And I ended up getting a job in the Dodge dealership in our town where we lived at that time, not far from here. And it actually was People Magazine's one of the top 10 dealerships in the nation at that time, which was quite a thing considering the small town that we were in. But it was a great place to work, and I wrenched there for a little over a year. The opportunity came along to move into the service counter. The service manager took another job, and I became the service manager there. And throughout that whole time, there was a fellow that would come in to the dealership and talk, and we would work on his truck. And he was very knowledgeable, and I knew he was an engineer at Walbro, but I didn't know exactly who he was. And one day, well, I knew his name, but one day one of the mechanics said, "You do know who that is, don't you?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have any idea who that is." He said, "Well, what's his name?" I said, "Well, it's Tom Hoover." And he said, "Yeah, that is Tom Hoover." I said, "No, not Tom Hoover." He said, "Yeah, Tom Hoover. Tom, father of the 426 Hemi Hoover." So I went home that night, scoured through my Mopar magazines, and sure enough, that was Tom Hoover, and I just didn't recognize him. So over time, Tom and I developed a friendship. I ended up going out to his house, working on some of his cars. He had a 68 Mercury Fastback, 360 powered, automatic. It was a former Sox and Martin race car. It was blue with flames on and a fiberglass lift-off hood. Some of you may remember that car from back in the day. It was in magazines. I got to ride in that car with him. Also worked on Tom's 57 DeSoto that he had. Helped him put the engine in and things like that. Gorgeous car. So Tom and I became good friends, and I was becoming dissatisfied with my career in the dealership. So I happened to see that a local company called Walbro Corporation was hiring applications technicians. I had no idea what an application technician was, but I ran into Tom, asked him, I said, what is that job? He said, get me a resume. And within a matter of a couple of weeks, I had quit my job at the dealership and gone to work as an applications technician in engineering for a program called the Orbital Walbro Corporation, which was Tom Hoover was the chief engineer of. I didn't know that at the time. So Tom got me into working in engineering, and I worked on developing direct injected two-stroke engines. I worked on the fuel systems for developing air-fuel rail, air-fuel interface between a fuel injector and an air injector for direct injection in, actually at that time was a Ford 3-cylinder engine, which was a Suzuki engine. But anyway, a two-stroke engine that I worked on development. I ended up moving over working in the dyno lab, doing a lot of development there, a lot of on-engine testing, fuel calibrations, very high-end, high-speed data acquisition stuff, and spent probably a little over a year working in the, probably close to 2 years. Ended up assembling and building another dyno lab during that time down in the southern part of the state for another division of the company. Orbital and Walbro got a divorce, and Orbital kind of went off on its own here, and it became Orbital Fluid Technologies was the name of the company that I was now working for, and they needed hands-on techs with a lot of development experience and high-speed data acquisition experience to go work on site for a company in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin called Mercury Marine. So we packed up the family. My 68 Pro Street Dart was in process at that time. In pieces, I had to hurry up and weld that car together enough so that I could put it on a trailer and move it to Wisconsin. And we spent several months working at Mercury Marine in product development. I was just getting my feet under me there when back home again, Walbro Corporation called me back and offered me a job as a senior applications specialist, which is a fancy name for a product engineer for the Ford and Chrysler aftermarket fuel pump lines. So I came back, took that position. It was quite a bit more money. Worked in R&D, product development for the aftermarket division of Walbro Corporation Automotive, Walbro Automotive, which later became TI Automotive. Worked a lot on that. And one of the things that I did work on hard, because all of us were gearheads, we were all guys with practical. I was a certified mechanic. I had spent a lot of time building hot rods, building cars, and so forth. And they really looked for guys like us, because what we would do is not only take the OE products that Walbro did and sell them in the aftermarket, but we also then would retrofit product that we had made and try to get it to fit other applications, or make kits that would put our pumps in other applications. So we did a lot of applications development, sold that, and you can still get those products today out in the industry, stuff I was involved in. My product forte was Ford and Chrysler, but another little side project I kept working on was high performance applications for particularly the Corvette and the Viper fuel pumps for both in-tank and inline applications. I did a lot of work in the aftermarket high performance for Ford Mustangs for their pulse width modulation system. For a while there, my name was kind of known as being the go-to guy for that. And I also took on some projects that I probably shouldn't have, but I would have customers, end users like myself out there, send me their hangers, and I would retrofit them with EFI fuel pumps for their application so that they could put an EFI pump in the OE tank and then run a Magnum engine, for example, in a car like the 70 Challenger with the fuel return and et cetera, et cetera. So I did a lot of that. Also, while I was there on my own, I developed, and it's the fuel system that's in my 68 Dart GTS. I never was there long enough to take it further, but I took one of their EFI pumps, put it in line, put a demand regulator, and created a demand regulated fuel system that feeds that nitrogen injected high horsepower dual quad 360 that's in that Dart. So that was a unique product that I was hoping to take further, but as far as I know, the only one like that is the one that I have in my car there right now, and someday I'll show you that fuel system. So that was kind of where I went with that. working in the aftermarket there. I decided to step out of the auto industry at that point, kind of went into being self-employed, developed my entrepreneurial skills, had several business failures, traveled the world for a while in that career, met a lot of really, really neat people. But one thing that I kept doing to generate cash flow was working both on my own at home as well as in body shops doing piecework, mostly on hot rods. So I really started to develop my abilities to fabricate and do body work, and really be a lot better at it working in 2 different hot rod shops here locally. Doing one of them was a pretty much all Mopar guy, did a ton of these, and then in the other shop I just did a lot of collision fabrication work, and decided to step out of that at that point. Went off and did a lot of cars on my own, and had a lot of fun doing it. I still have the reputation for doing that kind of work. I still get phone calls from people who want me to do that work. But as I decided to get serious about developing my car shop and feeling the effects that doing paint and body work has had on me all these years, I decided that I'm not doing much work anymore for customers and just focusing on developing the channel here and working on the cars that are here around the shop and trying to get some things done before I get too old to be able to do it anymore. The people have asked me where I have developed the skills for, or where I got the skills for doing metal work. And I can honestly tell you that the only place I got those skills was by doing metal work. I've not had any formal training since I was in 7th grade. I had a little metal shop where we learned how to bend metal and solder and things like that. But all of my metal skills have come by just figuring it out, doing things, some YouTube stuff that I've seen over the years, and just mostly figuring it out. I've always had a mind that has been very mechanical and spatial and able to figure things out. So it's really been not what I was taught, but just what I've learned by trial and error over the years. So as I said, I'm really not a fabricator. I just play one on YouTube. I'm always learning something new. I'm always finding better ways to do things. But I wanted to share my professional career with you. I've always done side work to be able to fund the hobby. I'm fortunate enough now that in my career I own a couple of businesses. I have a fair bit of time available to me, that I'm flexible. My career is pretty much more piecework now, where the company runs itself and there's certain things I have to step in and do. But most of this hobby and what you see here was funded over the years more by working on other people's cars and doing other things on the side to generate revenue that would pay for this, so it didn't come out of the family budget. So I've worked hard to get to this point, and I'm fortunate now to have the time. One of the reasons I like fabricating is not just because I like fabricating, which I do, but it's one of the ways that I can fund so many projects in the shop because I do so much of it myself. So guys will say, well, you can buy these frame rails for $300 or $400. That's true, but I certainly don't have probably $30 worth of sheet metal in this, if that, and some time, which I have. And that may seem like not a significant savings, but when you add that up over all of the cars we have here in the shop and you do everything yourself, I do all my own paintwork, I do all my own body work, it all adds up to a massive amount of savings, as long as you have the time and the energy to do it. So could I go out and buy, the stuff? Certainly, I could do that, but it would prolong these projects a lot way into the future. I might not be able to get done everything I want to, and I might not be able to do the number of projects that I'm doing. So that's one of the reasons also that I appreciate doing the fabricating. And that's why I've developed those skills. I've always been that guy that says, I can't afford to go out and pay somebody to paint a car like that 47 Ford. Or I could afford to do that, but I would have to get rid of 7 other cars around the shop if I did. So I learned the skills. And skills are something that you can make money on, you can earn money on. There's an episode here on the channel somewhere that talks about that, so I'm not going to go into that now. But most of this hobby really is about determination over intelligence. As you've heard me say so many times, I'm just too stupid to know any better. I just keep doing it. And that's how I've developed the skills over the years, and that's how I afford the hobby, is being willing to put the time in and do the work, and having done the work in a professional career where I made a living at it, and being able to apply those things to what I do here in my car shop today. Well, I hope you found this video informative and helpful, or at least mildly entertaining. Maybe it spurred some thoughts for you on things you can do. There's always a way if you're determined. You don't have to have a lot of cash money to be able to do this. You'd be surprised at how little I have tied up in all of this out here. It's just a lot of time and energy, and you have to balance that. It's not my number one priority. My family's number one always, and you just make time for it if it's important to you. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, that would be great if you would. That would really help us out here. It would help out the other viewers, and you would also get more episodes in what's coming. I'm going to be back on this frame rail in the next couple of days. We should be moving forward on the final welding on parts of this, hopefully this week yet, so that should be coming this Friday. I'm quite frankly a little burned out right now and needed to take a break, so this was an opportunity to do this episode on this subject that John had asked about. And I've got a whole list of stuff over there on the board that we need to be accomplishing. So we put out videos every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. So be sure to check that out. There's a lot of content here. I think this will be a lot more entertaining than most of the crap that's on TV, so why wouldn't you want to watch? I appreciate you being here. If you're on Facebook, we have a special thread going on over there, pinned to the top of the page. Show us what you're working on. We really want to get everybody talking. So post pictures of your project over there. We would appreciate it. I know that Duddy has posted pictures of his Dodge Explorer over there. That's an inside joke, so check out Duddy's channel if you haven't. Duddy's Adventure. Check it out. There's a link for it. Fun channel. I enjoy what he does on his Dodge truck project over there. So yeah, and there's an inside joke about the Dodge Explorer, so check that out. That'll do it. We also are on Instagram /mycarshop. There's tons of episodes here on the channel. We're approaching 140 videos now on the channel, so there's plenty to keep you entertained here. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And as always, rock on.